The Hall of Mirrors, collapse sequence, tracing the anticipatory stress reflex. At the heart of every survivor's collapse lies a moment that precedes language. It is not remembered, it is relived. This is the annihilatory stress response, the psychic implosion that occurs in infancy when the mother's gaze fails to return us to ourselves. This original fracture is not dramatic, it is silent, ambient, and lethal to the psyche. It tells the infant, you are too much. You must disappear to survive. The infant cannot leave the mother, so they seal her inside themselves, along with the part of them that once reached out and was not met. That part, the original true self, becomes trapped in a state of unending anticipation, sealed behind a wall of catastrophic aloneness. This is not ordinary stress, it is ontological terror. The annihilatory stress response is the moment the world stops being safe forever. It becomes the first gate, the origin of all future object worlds. The anticipatory shadow reflex, building the false bridge. In the absence of repair, the psyche begins to build a workaround, a bridge. This is the anticipatory shadow reflex, a relational phantom limb. It mimics connection by preempting the needs of the other. It becomes hyper attuned, reflexive, compliant. It watches the horizon for the next withdrawal and rushes to close the gap before it can open. But the bridge is not real. It's not built on love, but on terror of rupture. In healthy development, the anticipatory stress reflex regulates life moment to moment, modulating gaze, safety, hunger, belonging. But when the annihilatory stress response is never resolved, the system constructs the anticipatory shadow reflex, a defensive simulation of relationship. Our lack and vulnerability lie within this shadow. The survivor does not grow forward, they grow around the wound. Libidinal flooding and the fantasy of repair. When the narcissistic partner arrives, it feels like rescue. The anticipatory shadow reflex interprets their intensity, their obsession, their gaze as the return of the mother. The gate opens fully. This is the libidinal flooding phase. It is euphoric, disorganizing, seductive. The survivor does not realize it, but they have regressed all the way back to the moment before the annihilatory stress response was sealed. The partner is not seen clearly. They are inhabited as the missing part. This is not codependence, it is self replacement. The survivor's entire nervous system begins to orbit around the new figure, who is not experienced as a separate person, but as substitute libidinal mother mirror. The result, a new self concept forms, anchored not in reality but in projection. The survivor feels powerful, euphoric, loved, certain. The moment the narcissistic partner withdraws, the survivor experiences not confusion, but collapse. To survive the discrepancy between fantasy and reality, the mind activates the false protector, a psychic narrator who edits the world to preserve the fantasy. This internal editor justifies abuse, reframes rejection as their fault, and blames their own instincts. It says, you're too needy. If you fix him, I will survive. This part is not weak, it is heroic. It attempts to save the mother by deleting the child. At this point, the anticipatory stress reflex has become inflamed. The original annihilatory stress response begins to leak. The system oscillates between moments of clarity and deep disassociation. Reality bends to keep the object alive. The paracosm becomes the only safe place left. Collapse induced psychotic regression, CIPR. When the narcissist finally discards or devalues, collapse induced psychotic regression is activated. It is not madness, it is the psyche shattering its own coherence to preserve a part object fantasy. Sleep breaks down, memory loops, object constancy disappears. Shame becomes a physical weight. The survivor reverts to pre verbal, disassociated symbolic states. They speak in metaphors, they lose time, they live inside the gaze of an absent object. This is the actualization of the original annihilatory stress response. The baby is crying again in an adult's body, but this time the world is watching and it calls them neurotic, unstable, borderline, or psychotic. But what they are is dying. Inverse mirrored reflexive apathy, IMRA, the loop of death. As days turn into weeks, the survivors enter the loop. The loop has a name: inverse mirrored reflexive apathy. This is the death spiral of the internal object world. The good object is gone, the bad object has taken its place. The internal self is now mirroring contempt, mirroring withdrawal, mirroring apathy, until the subject begins to believe they never existed in the first place. This is the core of orbital collapse. The annihilatory stress response has gone from frozen to inflated to inflamed. The nervous system can no longer hold a self concept. It loops between numbness and longing, shame and fury. Every attempt to leave the object world results in symbolic annihilation. The survivor becomes a ghost of themselves, haunting the same relational space, begging for release. The Hall of Mirrors reversal. Here the mirrors shatter. What began as idealization through projection becomes introjection of persecution. The narcissist's contempt becomes the survivor's inner voice. The survivor now sees themselves as the narcissist once did. This is the full reversal. The Hall of Mirrors, once glittering with fantasy, is now a prison of symbolic inversion. The survivor is stuck, not with the narcissist, but with a mutated version of themselves, built from the sealed annihilatory stress response self, the false self protector's edits, the narcissist gaze, and the shattered mirror. They are no longer fighting for the relationship. They are fighting for a version of themselves that never truly existed. Recovery does not just begin with clarity, it begins with stillness. One day or one night, the survivor no longer runs, no longer begs, no longer performs. Something freezes, the loop doesn't stop. Instead, we do, observing, denying rather than challenging, confronting or idealizing them. Over time, with recursive practice, undoing the recursive patterning set in motion by the narcissistic speech pattern, the inner voice quietens. The ASR, still flickering at the bottom of the system, is finally seen.